In this week's episode of Making with Luke and Ajahn, we interview the legend Luke Pohlman, the other half of the Making podcast hosts. As a fellow creative, lover of Disney movies, and avid adventurer, Luke has quickly become a creative partner, and it's been a blast collaborating with him. Sit back, relax, and enjoy getting a closer look into Luke Pohlman's journey and mindset as a documentary filmmaker. All right, so we're going to start off right from the beginning. You're from Vienna, Virginia. Is this correct?
I live in Vienna, yeah. I live in Oakton next to Vienna. It's like one big
I
thing.
got it. All right, well, according to a recent poll by CNN, Vienna, Virginia was actually listed as a top 100 place to live in the United States. So you're 50 miles away from places like Shenandoah National Park, or like in Vienna, you have Meadowlark Botanical Gardens. So it's like super outdoorsy. Talk a little bit about what it was like to grow up there and whether or not living there impacted your love for the outdoors.
So I'll jump back, actually. So I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I lived there until I was about 1, and then moved to Fairfax, Virginia.
Mhm.
And then when I was, I guess, 6 or 7, so after first grade, we moved to Oakton, so right outside of Vienna. And I mean, I think it had a huge impact on my love for the outdoors. There's 4 acres of woods right behind my house. Difficult Run, which is a big stream, is less than a quarter mile away from my driveway. And so there's woods everywhere there. And then, I mean, just living in the woods is fun because you can just go out in the trails and explore and things like that. And having it be so close
Mhm.
is nice. And it's actually like a funny thing is we have a bell hanging on our shed, and because my brothers and I would be out playing and my parents would ring the bell and we'd have to come in for dinner.
Nice.
But no, I think it played a huge impact in my love for the outdoors.
That's awesome. So I know on your YouTube channel, you highlight a lot of like places you visited. So you're sometimes skiing in Santa Fe or boating, fishing in Florida. Of all the places that you visited, what's been your favorite place to visit so far?
Oh, probably Whitefish, Montana, and like Glacier National Park. That trip was at the beginning of high school. But just like being up in the mountains was really, really fun. And like spending time with family and just hanging out was an awesome time.
Is this the place that you got that amazing photo on your like those iPhone pictures that you took?
Yeah, that was the trip I had. I was rocking the iPhone 6S, and I actually brought my mom's, I think it's a Nikon 700D.
Mm-hmm.
Like I brought her DSLR and took some pictures with that, but like on a lot of the things we have, I
Yeah.
just was taking pictures with my phone.
For the people listening, the ones that he took on his iPhone came out like incredible, dude. They look like they could be in an Apple commercial or something.
Well, it's because the land does all the work. That's the thing. Like when you're out in those
Hey
places
man,
in national parks, it's
I think
gorgeous.
I think a lot of it has to do with the person behind the camera too.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but
All right. Well, so your first video on your YouTube channel is like a simple video, GoPro video of you playing hockey with your brother. Uh,
yes.
like myself, I know you're pretty close to your family. Unlike myself, I'm the oldest of my siblings. You, however, are the middle child of your family. You got one
Yes.
younger brother, one older brother. What was it like growing up with them? What's that dynamic like?
I mean, it was interesting to say the least. So my older brother is 2.5 years older than me, and my younger brother is 3.5 years younger than me.
Mhm.
So at the start of my life, it was my older brother and I all the time. We were best buds, did everything together. I was always trying to keep up with him. And then actually wanted a younger sister, and I was super upset when my parents said it was a boy. But then he was born, and they said like I was so happy, and
Mhm.
in the long run, I am. But it was always interesting because like I had someone to look up to and see doing the older things, but then I also had someone like younger than me to play with. And as people's personalities kind of developed, my older brother was much more like school focused, like really smart guy,
Mhm.
focused on those things. Whereas my younger brother was super, and still is super athletic, played ice hockey starting when he was 4, picked up lacrosse shortly thereafter. And I started ice hockey in 6th grade and lacrosse in 5th. So I played sports my whole life,
Mhm.
like baseball, soccer, things when I was younger. But because my younger brother and I were both playing sports all the time, we just played together all day, every day. Like we'd go to school, come home, play roller hockey till it was dark, come in for dinner, and then be playing knee hockey inside. Like we were just always playing. But in terms of the dynamic between my brothers and I, obviously I'm not super far from either brother, but there's like a bigger gap between them.
Mhm.
And I actually wrote my college essay on being a middle child. And I talked about being the bridge between my two siblings and kind of bridging that age gap,
Yeah.
and kind of helping them communicate because they've always just been in very different phases of life.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything. And actually, one thing is psychologists like often say that the middle child gets neglected
Mhm.
and feels like ignored by their parents because they're not the oldest. So they're
Right.
not doing all the things first, and they're not the youngest. They're not the baby.
Right.
But from a very young age, I just demanded attention. Like you know my personality.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
always attracting attention. So
Never getting overlooked for sure.
yeah.
So you mentioned your older brother, and some conversations that we had, you have definitely talked about him as an inspiring figure in your life. How has he impacted your decisions up to this moment? Like,
I mean, I'd say he's definitely played an impact because he like when I show him my stuff, he like always likes it, but he's also not afraid to tell me if something's not right. Kind of how we mentioned in the last episode, where sometimes you see someone you don't want to hurt their feelings.
right,
He's never afraid to kind of give constructive criticism, which is awesome. And then the other thing is just he's my big brother. Like you don't know because you're the oldest, or
right,
you might because your siblings I'm sure look up to you. But there's just something about having that older sibling that's always been there,
yeah,
that is someone you can look up to.
for
And
sure.
then also I was very athletically focused, but also outdoor focused.
Mhm.
And as he got older, he also shifted to having like an outdoor focus, like interest in farming and the environment and things like that. And so as our interests came closer together, we were able to talk about those things and just grow a lot closer.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's awesome. So like that's whole sustainable side and environmental side you were able to connect on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about your brothers. Let's talk about your parents a little bit.
Mm.
Your mom does photography, and your dad is a lawyer. A lawyer. I feel like you incorporate both of those career traits in your work. You know, you got the creative cinematographer on one hand, and then the logistical contracts, everything planned out on the other. What's it like having them as parents, and are they a big part of your process?
I would say they're definitely a big part of my process. I hear all the time when I'm like publishing my works or things like that, or just anything. My mom says, "Never sign anything until your dad reads it,"
Hmm.
and it's just
Right.
like that constant reminder. But then my mom loves to push me creatively, and she understands the importance of the creative field.
Right.
Right, like my parents were super supportive of me going to college to study documentary film,
Yeah.
which I feel like a lot of parents might not be,
Right.
but that's because my mom understands that media is extremely valuable and that any company needs media producers.
Mhm.
And so she always likes to push me that way, but she also helps kind of keep me uh, in check with like staying focused.
Yeah.
But she's also my number one fan. If you look at any of my YouTube videos, she has commented on them. Nice long comments. She always hypes me up, sends my videos to people.
Yeah.
But then jumping over to my dad, he keeps me moving forward. I'll like show him something and he'll love it. I'll walk into a room and he'll just be watching it like months after I've showed it to him.
Yeah.
Like he just rewatches.
Yeah.
But when I show him something, he's like, "That's great. What's next? That's great. What's next?" And keeps me moving forward
Yeah.
in that way. And then also, like you said, having a dad who's a lawyer is helpful when dealing with like contracts and things like that, and working with clients and finding clients because unless you work for like a firm and you're only doing legal work for that company,
Mhm.
a lawyer is a lot like a freelance filmmaker where they have to find clients, bring clients
Yeah.
in,
And-
work
yeah.
with them and kind of move on. And there are some clients who come in and stay and you do a lot of different things for them, but there's also some people who come in for just one thing and then move on.
Mhm.
So kind of having him as an example to follow for potentially my own business framework is extremely helpful.
Yeah. Um, so for me, my parents are a big part of like the feedback team where like I'll make something and then before I export, I'll go show them and then get their feedback. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, I definitely like to show them my stuff kind of throughout the process. When I am working, I just sit in my room and work.
Right.
And my dad comes in and he'll just kind of sit in my room and watch me for a few minutes. I'll be like, "Do you want
Yeah.
to see?" He'll be like, "Yeah," and then I'll show him, and he'll
Same.
kind of
Yeah.
watch, and then he'll do the same thing he always does. Great, keep going. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, "Okay."
Right. That's awesome. Um, so let's talk about, if I'm not mistaken, one of your first long form documentaries, Cause a Change,
Mm,
which highlights a stream restoration project at a local creek, Cat Harpin Creek. Is
yeah,
that correct?
Cat Arpin. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were included in a Washington Post article and featured on an episode of Sustainable Scoop, which emphasized youth environmental activism as a result of this doc. Give us the rundown of that whole experience as a fairly new filmmaker. What were the challenges? What were the highlights? And how did that idea come about?
So it was actually, it's a funny, very long story, but
We
my parents, yeah, we got time. So my parents went to back to school night, and my junior year, I was taking AP Environmental Science.
okay.
And when my parents met my AP Environmental Science teacher, he spoke about C Club, which is Students for Environmental Action, and the things they'd done. And he mentioned a documentary that had been done previously about the club and kind of what they do generally.
Hmm.
And then he also said that they were thinking about doing another documentary. So my parents came home from back to school night so excited and were like, "Luke, you have to talk with your teacher about this and kind of get the rundown." And I was like, "Okay." So I went up to my teacher, his name's Dr. Smith, and I got the idea from him, and we kind of talked about it for a while. And I was like, "I think this would be something cool to do." And so at that point, we began to move forward, and I was officially hired by Trout Unlimited, which is a nationwide nonprofit conservation organization that has statewide chapters.
Right.
Um, so they hired me over the course of 1 year to produce a documentary following a stream restoration project.
Yeah.
But the kicker was that we went out on this one day in December 18th of 2018.
Hmm.
And was it 2018? I think it may have been 2017. Yeah, I think it was 2017
Hmm.
to check out the site and see if we could do a project there and that if the documentary would be feasible. And if we went out and they said, no, it won't work, then the documentary would have just washed away. But we got clearance, and so we moved forward. All along, I was just kind of capturing as much as I could, stressed about the final assembly process and things like that, and then scheduling because I was also playing varsity lacrosse at the time, and also on a club ice hockey team and the high school hockey team. So just
Yeah.
pretty busy. And then about halfway through the project time, I recruited another filmmaker to help with the video portion and then like the editing and kind of just work under me
Yeah.
as my assistant. And so that was super helpful because I wasn't able to make it to everything. And then they picked the one weekend for the final restoration project day that I couldn't make it to because I had a lacrosse tournament.
Hmm.
So it was only him there filming that day. So if he wasn't there, I wouldn't have had any of that footage.
Right.
And then it moves into the summer, and I'm kind of slowly starting to plan things out, how I want to do the edit. And then the guy who was working under me basically said, "I don't think we're going to finish. I'm dropping off the project."
Oh,
And so I was like, okay. So now I have to edit a 45-minute to hour documentary by myself.
yeah.
Never done anything that long before.
Right.
So then the stress level kind of picked up. But I had my dad coming in saying, you can do it. Just work on it a little bit at a time and just keep going. So what I did is I kind of planned out the whole thing, what I wanted, like with each major event. And then I just separated it up and did like 7 minutes at a time. And I would treat it like one little video that then went all together. And so I just started working. I started in the middle because that's the one I wanted to do first.
Right.
And then just kind of moved around and then finished in the fall and had 3 rounds of screening and review with the people who hired me, where I'd stay after school and set it up in the classroom. And then all these like people would come in, scientists, professors, like professors from George Mason University, which is nearby to my high school.
Hmm.
And they would just watch it, let me know what they thought. I'd have to take down all their notes, then go back and edit. and revise and trim down and do all this stuff, and did that 3 times. And then after the third one, they were like, we love it. Looks good. Let's publish it. So then exactly 1 year after we started, the video was released.
Mm-hmm. So sort of like a follow-up question to that, you talked about like all that work that went into it. When they finally said, we're good, no more changes, we can publish it, what was that feeling like?
Well, it was kind of mixed. One, I hated it. I was so ready to be done.
Really? Okay.
Because it was so long just working on the same thing, and I'd seen it over and over and over again. And so it was just nice to be done at that point. But I was very happy that they liked it, and I was happy with how it came out. Looking back at it now, like any video, there's things I pick out about it where I'm like, oh, I probably could have done that better.
Yeah.
But given the equipment I was using and the amount of experience and training I had, which was relatively very little, it was super cool to have that opportunity and to be able to kind of capitalize on that.
Gotcha. Well, sticking to the whole environmental topic, you've been pretty outspoken when discussing environmental, ecological issues in the past. For example, you made a vocal video about your thoughts on the death of Sudan, who was the last male northern white rhino. Is the eco-political documentary niche something you're interested in pursuing?
I think it would definitely be a niche that I would be interested in kind of like touching on, but also kind of underlaying in my films. I think the one where the video I made about Sudan, that I was just so upset when I saw it. I just it was an impulse thing. I just sat down, recorded it, and uploaded it. Didn't really edit it at all.
Yeah.
And I think that, well, unfortunately, I can say that I probably know that throughout the rest of my life, there will be things like that happen where I will feel the need to really tell a story and hit that eco-political niche. But one of the things I want to do with my films is show people that the environment is kind of worth saving and worth exploring and going out into. And so kind of just having maybe those themes underlying my video without screaming politics in someone's face would be a nice thing to kind of master, I guess, or be able to figure out how to do. But I would definitely say so, yeah.
So throughout all these earlier projects, earlier videos, your YouTube channel, what was the resource that you used to learn most of the stuff that you learned? Was it just sort of trial and error, or did you take any courses? What was that like?
So in the very beginning, my first film that I made, it's actually not the first one that's published on my channel because it was published on my old channel.
Okay.
It does live on there though. It is from a trip my family took to Lake Placid, New York for my younger brother's hockey tournament. And I edited that with the GoPro Studio software. So you download that for free because I filmed the whole thing on a GoPro. I was so excited. So I downloaded that software and just edited that. And I was working on a computer that had a Core i3 in it. And so it kept crashing and it was so slow. But eventually I got the video out and I was so happy. I was so excited. I thought it was so cool.
And using that program, you get that little intro, right? The GoPro intro in each of the videos.
I think you can, but I didn't know how to do it at that point.
I got you.
I did put it in a couple of my later videos, but because I was just reading the box, okay, I think I put stuff here. I think this scissors, I can cut a clip with this. So I was just figuring it out. And then I switched to iMovie after doing a couple short films in the GoPro software. And I found this hour-long YouTube video where this guy just walks through iMovie, and I just wrote down a bunch of notes on what to do in iMovie. And then for a long time, all of my films were in iMovie. And then when I got to my junior year of high school, when I was going to do this Cause of Change, this documentary, I was like, okay, I can't do this in iMovie. I should probably use something a little better. And my mom had been using my student ID to get discounted Adobe Suite for a year. So I was like, oh, I'll just download it. And so then I was trying to learn Premiere. And like you, I had found Peter McKinnon, and I've been watching him for a while, but not really paying attention to the tutorials so much because I didn't have the software.
Right.
But then I just binged Peter McKinnon to figure out things like that and just looking up other random YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And then, because honestly, all editing softwares, the basic layout is similar. The
It's just
timeline on the bottom,
cutting, dragging, dropping.
yeah. And like I'm still learning, and there's a lot that I don't know, but it's kind of just been figuring it out myself and YouTube videos really to learn.
So that good mix.
Yeah.
All right. So first year at Ithaca College as
Yeah.
a documentary studies and production major. How did that go? What are you feeling? What are your thoughts on this past year?
I mean, I think it was just a great year. I really enjoyed first semester. Like all of my thoughts about school were confirmed. Like I only applied to Ithaca College,
Mm-hmm.
and because I just knew that's where I wanted to go.
Right.
And I had all these hopes and expectations going in, and they were all basically all confirmed. First semester was great. Cinema production one, like we talked about with Professor Bonetta, was awesome. Getting to do those films there, working with the Bolex camera was just really fun, and
Right.
planning that out was cool. And then doing the final film and even the imageless film, like just the sound recording, was fun because I'd never really done that before.
Yeah.
Second semester started out great. Our hemp doc that I finally convinced you to do was going well. We had that great weekend, and then coming home was unfortunate, but I tried to make the most of it. I definitely noticed a change in classes, kind of way less work, and it was just easier.
Yeah.
But I was trying to keep myself busy. I really struggled with what COVID-19 taught me about doc for a while, but then it just hit me at one point, and I just grinded the whole thing out.
Yeah.
But overall, a good year. I'm really excited to go back.
Yeah. And for listeners that didn't watch Luke Pohlman's "What COVID-19 Taught Me" film, it was talking about the good old days and how being in quarantine is allowing him to reflect on the great year he's had at college, the connections he's made, the memories he's made, the places he's visited. And it was an emotional film that sort of captured his first year at college. You mentioned your Bolex film, Pursuit, which is,
Yes.
you basically document the day of a fly fisherman. Fly fishing is something that you talk about a lot and you're very interested in. And in the last episode, you mentioned the great detail that went into planning that film. But what did you get out of that whole experience? Like relationships built or valuable filmmaking lessons learned? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited to get to use the Bolex, but also super stressed because there's just simple mistakes that you can make that will like mess up your film feeding through and things like that. But then there's also things that like won't be your fault. Like one of our classmates, their film got lost, like when we shifted to Kodak. And so I was just nervous throughout the whole process. But I think that kind of caused me to amplify the amount of like thinking and decision making that I put into my process, which was, I think, very helpful. Like I said in the last episode, I planned out basically every second of my film.
Yeah.
And I'd say what I got out of that was I had never done that before. It's always been kind of capture what's going on and then piece it together and find the story after. But there, I had my set story in mind, and then I got to shoot what I wanted and then just move into editing. And one thing that happened though was, like I mentioned, I wanted to have a shot of like catching a fish and releasing a fish, but there were no fish in the water. And one thing that Professor Bernetta had told me to do was to engage with the process. So that was when I then stepped back, kind of disregarded the shots that I'd planned and just looked and really appreciated where I was and some of the things that I could capture. Because like I was 40 minutes outside of the town of Ithaca to shoot that. And so that is a place where I could almost guarantee that no other Ithaca College student will be ever. And so it was cool to kind of show off a place and an environment that like other people wouldn't be in.
Right.
But yeah, and then when I wrapped it all up and kind of put it all in order, and I worked with a student from the music department who was in my seminar class to have him score a piece. I'd never worked with a musician before.
Right.
And so it's just a lot of firsts for me. And it was also
Yeah.
nice because it was so early into the school year that we were doing it. And it was just like a nice warm welcome into the film program.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely relate to the whole scoring. I had never worked with a composer either, so that was a very. I think me and you were the one of like 3 or 4 people who actually included music in the.
Yeah, that's because Professor Bernetta didn't want people to use music. Like even
At
after I showed
the
it,
you can't use that.
yeah, when I showed it, he was like, "Are you sure you want the music in there?" And I was like,
Right.
"Yes, I want the music in there."
Yeah. So you talked about the process of your first film.
Hmm.
Did you have a similar process for your second film at college, which is preparation? And for those listening, preparation was almost like a sequel, a more in-depth version of Pursuit, and it was filmed on a digital camera. What was that like?
So that film was really fun for me.
Hmm.
Um, it went through a lot of iterations in the planning process. I originally was thinking about doing a documentary on why people tie flies as compared to buying them, because with the cost of materials and equipment, it's generally cheaper to buy flies than to tie them yourself.
Right.
Um, but I kind of moved into more of like an experimental kind of documentary style film. And I might get myself into trouble for this, but I really like pushing equipment to like the limit and kind of trying to do things that other people might not do.
Yeah.
And so for half of the shots in my film, or if not more than half, I shot those while it was snowing. It was like 18 degrees outside and I was standing in the water. I had waders on for fishing, so like I wasn't actually getting wet, but it was
Yeah.
cold and
Right.
all of the conditions that they say on the signs and PPEX not to take your camera out into.
Yeah.
And I was out there with their camera. um, and so in that day, I was kind of just going with the flow, just shooting what I thought was nice and kind of capturing as much of this area as I could. And then the other portion, the close-ups of my friend Don tying the flies, that was more planned out. I kind of knew some of the shots and types of angles that I wanted to get.
Yeah.
But again, kind of just adapting with what was going on. And then what really happened in post-production was the plan that I had developed just wasn't going to work.
Right.
And so I then had to do again what Professor Bernetta said, which was engage with the process. And so then I kind of just looked at the footage and let the story tell me what
Mhm.
it was. And so that's where then I got to cross-cutting the footage of the water and the snow and things like that with him tying, and kind of the story developed about how he's preparing for when he can finally go fishing. So he's like tying the fly so that way when the storm ends, he can go and fish. And I actually watched, our professor recommended I watch 2 films by Andrei Tarkovsky
Mhm.
because he thought I would like them. One of them was 2.5 hours. One of them was 1.5 hours, and they were both in Russian,
Mhm.
shot on film. So they're black and white.
Yeah.
And I watched most of them, like most of each of one of them. And my final shot was kind of inspired by Tarkovsky, just kind of slowly panning up, but also pausing, and then keep going and then pausing, which I think Professor really liked in the end, and I liked how it turned out. So that was
Yeah.
cool.
That's awesome. So, yeah, you touched on like the process of how you approach these 2 films, but do you have like a set way to start one of your films, and throughout the whole process, what's your favorite part?
I think for me, it starts with an idea.
Hmm.
Like I'll get an idea or something that I think would be cool to do, and then I kind of just develop. It starts with a notebook. Like I write the idea down, and then I kind of develop the idea, figure out this might be cool, this might be cool, never mind, that's not going to work, and kind of keep going there. And then what I've noticed with some of my more planned out films is I'll basically shoot the entire thing and then scrap it. I'll just be like, no, this is not how I want to convey this idea.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just like stumbling through creative block for a little while before moving on. But what would my favorite part of the film be? I mean, I'd say for me, it's honestly probably when I have the camera in my hand and I'm out in the world. Like for the films I did, I was out in cool environments where people don't normally go, shooting these films. Just because the thing is I am creating the film for other people to see that area, but often when I'm out there, I step back from the camera and I just appreciate where I am,
Yeah.
which is so cool. And like that, making this film is giving me the opportunity to go to that place. But behind that, I would say like second and pretty close up there is editing. I'm not super great. Like I'm not great at the technical skills of the editing software yet. Like there's a lot I don't know, but I enjoy the editing process and kind of fine tuning the story and integrating the music. Love sound. I love sound. Like I'm super impacted by sound. So movies with strong sound design, like just really get to me.
Right.
And also sound is what transports people to the environment. So if I'm shooting in the woods, I need to incorporate water. I need to incorporate birds, wind, leaves rustling, all these things so that it really feels like people are there, which is just a fun challenge and something fun to work on.
Right. Right. You touched a little bit on, you know, when you're there with the camera and you're making something for another person to see, you're still conscious enough to take a step back a little bit and just take in where you are and take in the environment that's around you. January 23rd, 2019, you made a video that discussed the decision to say goodbye to Instagram for a period of time because of how much you were using it. As a filmmaker, I know a lot of us struggle to find that balance of time and place because our careers are essentially on laptops and phones. How do you navigate that ability to like stay present while also being able to capture these amazing moments?
Yeah, first off, I commend you for the research. You really went through all of my YouTube videos and looked. Um, I mean, I'd say it's definitely a real challenge. I oftentimes like I enjoy diving into an edit and spending hours on end on my computer, realizing it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like, oh wow, I've been here for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Just just doing that, and it's very fun. But when I'm on vacations and I want to film, it's harder than if I'm planning a film and going out. Because when I'm on a vacation, I want to capture it for others later and for myself to look back on later, but it often limits my own participation. Like if I am also a character in what's going on, like if I'm at the beach with my family and I'm filming everything, I'm capturing what they're doing and I can't participate in what they're doing.
Right, right.
Whereas if I am shooting a film that I've like planned, I'm often not the subject. So
Right.
I can shoot the subject and then also kind of step back or take five and just look around and appreciate where I am.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm definitely working on finding that balance and making it easier for myself on vacations
Mhm.
if I want to shoot. But honestly, the past X amount that I've been on, I just haven't shot anything.
For sure. Um, you touched a little bit about obviously you said your favorite part was like having the camera in your hand, whereas I talked about in the last episode that my favorite part is that post-production phase. So I think that's why our dynamic works so well. Another reason why our partnership works well is what I've noticed. We both love food, but you specifically love to cook. I love to eat. What about cooking do you enjoy so much, and where does that enjoyment come from? What are your favorite things to cook?
What do I love about cooking? Well, growing up, my mom was never shy about inviting my brothers and I into the kitchen,
Hmm.
whether it be baking a birthday cake or baking an Easter cake or
Yeah.
kind of just being there watching her and kind of cook and do her thing. I'm just fascinated by bringing everything together. Like similarly to editing a film, you pull all of your shots together and kind of have to combine them just right to get this final thing.
Right.
Whereas when I'm cooking, I'm pulling in all these different ingredients and things like that that come together, and then I present to people and they eat it and enjoy it, which is what I want people to see with my films, what I really like doing is I've more recently become infatuated with like barbecue
Yeah.
and trying to do different things, like with like barbecue flavors and like cooking meats and things like that. Um, but yeah, no, it's just, I just love it. I like cooking it and then I like eating it. I like watching people eat it. It's like when I tell people about a comedy special, I want to watch it with them because I want to see them laugh.
Right. 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 Right.
Like
There you
it makes me happy seeing other people happy.
go. Gotcha. Well, that's a great way of putting it, and I think yeah, that sums up like who you are. What I've noticed in the last year of getting to know you, you're definitely big on that. Another part of your personality and who you are that I've noticed is your love for sustainable clothing and outdoor adventure brands like Patagonia and Yeti.
Mm.
You talk about these brands a lot. I just wanted to get into it a little bit. I've never really asked you this, but what about these brands do you love so much? Like, why does it get you so fired up?
So, first thing I'd say is I'll start with Yeti. I like Yeti because they over engineer everything.
Mhm.
Like these things are meant to take an absolute beating.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, they are also priced for their over engineering, but they are just their ideals fall in line with my own personal ones, pushing everything to the limit, not really having to worry about it as much. Like when I'm out there with my camera pushing it to the limits, I also still have to be very worried because it's my equipment and I am paying for it. So if I drop this and like drop my camera in the water or do something like that, I have to pay for it. Whereas like if I'm with my like Yeti water bottle or whatever and it falls out of my backpack, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's what it's made for. Um, Also, a goal of mine is to be the first like filmmaker that is a Yeti ambassador.
Damn.
I've shared that with you, but I figure I'll,
Speak it into existence.
yeah. My mom says she thinks I can do it. So,
Yeah.
um, but Patagonia, I just really like the brand because they have, as a company, a stronger environmental statement. Like they're dedicated to giving back and being as green as they can. They also make quality products. I haven't had a Patagonia product that just falls apart on me. They also back their products. Like if you like rip your jacket sleeve or something like that, they have patch kits and things like that, or you can send it into them and they'll fix it for you. They also have a huge recycling program for their clothes. Like if you send in a jacket that you've outgrown, you're not using anymore, they will evaluate its condition and either like resell it as like a worn wear item at a very discounted price for someone who needs it, or they will take it apart and reuse those fibers.
Hmm.
So it's just things like that, little things.
Yeah. Um, so I think one thing that set us apart this year was the fact that both of us have like previous work that we've done, and we both are trying to start our own production companies. Mine capturing studios. Yours is something called Glacier Toe Productions. For a second, talk about your production company. Like, what's your vision for its future? Where do you see it ending up in the next 5, 10 years?
So Glacier Toe Productions has kind of it's been in the making for a long time. It
Mhm.
started out as Luke Pohlman Productions long ago. And then in this past year and a half, I'd say, it's kind of shifted to Glacier Toe Productions as I've refined my focus and kind of looked at the things that I like doing.
Right.
Um, but the goal for it is just to be a way for me to find clients and like people to do work for that I want to do, right? If I was marketing myself as a freelance filmmaker, it would be kind of like opening myself up to the entire market. Whereas I've kind of selected the outdoor film world as kind of my niche.
Mhm.
And so I'm targeting that more specific group. I
Right.
can then compile a portfolio and things like that under this company name and just kind of get that message out there. Plus, I also think it's important to brand yourself similar to companies you want to do work for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so just Yeah. Plus, I really like glaciers and Glacier Till.
Yeah.
And it's just fun, man.
Yeah. We're just gonna get into a little bit of like randomness, just things that I thought uh were needed to be asked.
Let's hear it.
You played lacrosse in high school.
Yeah.
You're big on ultimate frisbee now in college, and you played a whole bunch of sports you listed off earlier in the episode. How important is it for you to stay active and interact with other people through sports and athletics?
I'd say it's definitely big. I mean, I never want to be out of shape. I mean, I'm sure I could be. I actually know I could be in better shape
Hmm.
than I am, but I feel comfortable with where I'm at. Like I feel like I can compete at a reasonable level or do things at a reasonable level.
Yeah.
Um, Athletics has always been big for me because I'm really competitive. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's certain times where the competitive spirit kind of just comes out.
Yeah.
Um, and so I enjoy competing. I don't like losing, but I will, obviously.
Right.
Um, and it's just honestly the fun of competing is something that's big. I also like the philosophies of a team and kind of having the coach and the things that you learn from being on a team that transcends to the world outside of sports is big thing for me.
Especially in a career full of collaboration, I think
Yeah,
it's really important. Yeah.
yeah. And then also just playing sports my whole life has allowed me to stay in good enough shape that I can go on like these longer hikes and do these outdoor things without necessarily having to train for them.
Hmm.
If that makes sense. Like obviously there's some like hikes and mountain climbs that you really have to train for and some things, but I've just like generally been able to just go out and do things like, oh, if I want to hike for 4 hours, I'm in good enough shape where I can just go hike for 4 hours.
Right. Sick. Um, who are some artists or creators that inspire you, like directors or musicians or even movies that you've seen? What kind of content gets you pumped up?
That is a good question. I mean, I love the Yeti Presents films just because they're kind of the style of films I want to make. There's this one docuseries in particular that's called My Hungry Life.
Hmm.
And it's like on Yeti's YouTube channel by Yeti. And it's about Eduardo Garcia, who is this guy. He's a professional chef. He's an avid hunter, fly fisherman. And so it's this series where he spends time in the outdoors with various friends and people, does things I love, fishing, hiking, all these things, and he forages for food, and then he just cooks like over a campfire. So it's just a lot of my interests combined into one. I also like, just like you, Peter McKinnon, seeing like the motion graphics and things and how his channel has progressed over time gets me excited.
Hmm.
Um, I love like Steven Spielberg films,
Yeah.
like Jurassic Park and things like that, and just the way he moves the camera and composes his shots. Um, just kind of people like that, I guess. Let's see who
I know
else.
you're a very big Disney fan.
Oh
Talk a,
yeah,
talk a little bit about that because I know, I mean, that's a big obsession of yours.
yeah, I love Disney. Um, I don't know. I mean, I feel like part of what I attribute that to, I guess, is my best friend for like my whole life has since being born is like my younger brother, or since him being born is my younger brother. And this is a reason that I have in my head. I don't know if it's actually why or not,
Yeah.
but when I was in, let's say, sixth grade, I think my older or younger brother would have been in second grade. And
Right.
since I was hanging out with him, I would be doing
Watching the same.
things a lot younger. Yeah, watching things younger. But at the same time, I just love the stories. And
Mhm.
I'm, like I said, I'm big into sound and just the way that like the music integrates into the story and like progresses as following the theory of a musical. Um, I just love it, like how they play into each other, and then how with there's such a variety of Disney movies. There's live action, there's animated, there's Pixar animated, and so this whole world kind of falls into this one category that can really take you anywhere. Like
Mhm.
no matter who you are, what your interests are, what you're passionate about, where you come from, there's a Disney film that you can relate to.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. You touched a little bit about musicals, and I think both of us are very big fans of The Greatest Showman. That's something
Yes.
we jammed out to in the car ride on the way to film our hemp documentary in upstate New York. But yeah, definitely music and sound is something that is so important. And like Professor Bonetta, his lessons about how sound is essentially what provides depth to film. Without
Yeah.
sound, it'd be a little bit harder to watch certain things.
Yeah. And a fun fact about musicals is I actually used to do musical theater.
Me too.
Nah, yeah.
Yeah.
When did you do it? Like what ages?
No, like I did it in high school too. Like
Oh, like all the way through high school.
from third grade to my sophomore year of high school. I did.
Wow.
Yeah, like Charlie Brown. I was Charlie Brown. I don't know if it's
Hey.
a thing, but no, I'm just kidding. It was yeah, I was Charlie Brown. I was in Footloose. Yeah, yeah. We never talked about this.
No, we didn't.
You
No,
know,
yeah. For me, so we used to go to this like summer camp like when I was young,
yeah.
where it was just like a week. It was like a Christian camp, and then the whole point of it was you'd put on a play, and then like on the last day of camp, like all the parents would come, and there was just this like biblical story play. So I guess that's where it started.
Hmm.
And then in elementary school, like kind of the group of people that I was friends with, well, actually, no, I should jump back first. When I was younger in elementary school, they did school plays at my school.
Hmm.
And so I saw those and always loved them and just thought they were the greatest thing. And then when I was getting close to being old enough, because it was only fifth and sixth graders, when I was in fourth grade, my school had like a disagreement with the director. And so she just wasn't invited back. So they stopped doing plays.
Really?
But she still did them on her own, like with her own company. So then when I was in fifth grade, I went and auditioned for this play. I auditioned for Annie. Annie Jr. is what we were doing. And I remember I walked into my audition and the director was like, "So Luke, have you seen Annie? Are you familiar with the characters?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, okay. Well, for future,
Great start.
yeah. So for future, you should probably be familiar." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I like watched it as soon as I got home. But I gave my audition, got called back, and was given the part of Oliver Warbucks.
Okay. Oh
So
wow.
I had the male lead in my first like serious thing
Nice.
and crushed it, loved it. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Arguably one of the best experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And then in sixth grade, that like after that play, that teacher was hired at a middle school to be the drama teacher and do the theater there. And she was one of the big reasons I chose to go to that school. And so like I went because I had my feeder school, but then there were other programs at this school that I like qualified for. So I went there. Then in seventh grade, we did Mulan. I was called back for 8 leads. Didn't get any of them. They all went to eighth graders. I was upset,
Yeah.
but we moved past it. And in eighth grade, I was then Sebastian in The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome. No, that's awesome. Um, Dang, I can't believe we never even
yeah,
the amount of times we talked about like musicals and we never touched on that.
yeah. That's
Um, let's get back into your whole
yes.
creative ideas. What's a future concept that you're interested in exploring? I mean, I know that's a pretty on the spot question, but is there something that you're thinking about or
Like in terms of something other than
no, I
like
mean,
videography.
yeah, no, in terms of anything. I mean, like, what's an idea or like a concept that you've thought to yourself, oh wow, that may be cool to film.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So going back to school this fall, I have a docu-series in mind that I want to do about what it means to be an Ithaca fly fisherman.
Hmm.
Um, because like the fly fishing community in Ithaca is actually pretty strong. There's a lot of people in it. And so I kind of want to interview some of those key people and just kind of see what there is, because there's a lot more to fly fishing than just catching fish. It's about being out in the environment that the fish are in, being out in the streams, all these beautiful places.
Right.
And so I kind of want to tap into that world. Kind of, I guess, a dream documentary that I want to do is my younger brother is learning to be a pilot. Like he's getting his pilot's license. He's like going through classes right now.
That's so
And
sick. Okay.
yeah. And so one of his goals is to fly around the world. And I am the only person that he has like offered or invited to come with him. He wants me to come with him on this like flight around the world.
And document that.
And yeah, so I would document the whole thing and
Yeah.
kind of do either a documentary or docu-series about it, which I think would be so cool, especially because I don't know if it'll happen at the time that he wants it to, but he wants it to happen like when he's like a junior in high school. And like, so like when he's still young. And so he'd be like a young kid flying around the world,
Yeah.
which would just be awesome to document that.
Absolutely. I don't know if you watched this, but Peter McKinnon and Matty Hupoya, they both like got to test out the Canon C200.
Mm-hmm.
To test it out, they filmed this documentary about this guy named Matt Guthmiller, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
I think I remember that episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically talks about how this dude is the youngest guy. I think he was like 18 or 19, youngest guy to fly around the world. So like it pretty much be like a mirror of that, which would be super cool to say.
Yeah.
I know a guy whose brother. I'm rooting for him. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think we're nearing the end of the interview, so we're gonna get into a rapid fire round where I'll ask 10 quick questions. To end the episode, you can answer it however you please. Doesn't have to be quick answers. Can be however long you want. So yeah, let's get into it. The first one is, what song or couple songs do you feel most accurately describes your life?
So I would say, referencing The Greatest Showman, like you said, A Million Dreams from The Greatest Showman. Big dreamer.
Great song.
Like I think of ideas and things I want to do all the time in scopes of filmmaking, in scopes of life, just all sorts of different things. And that's really the only way to sum that up. And then the other one is You Can't Bring Me Down by Dierks Bentley, which is a country song.
Oh, God.
But I just really like the message. It's just about kind of how a lot of people will be against you in life, but like they can't really pull me down.
Yeah.
Because I know what I want and I know whose people's opinions matter to me and whose don't. So just kind of, I use those songs to keep myself moving forward and motivated.
Sick. What's one important thing that you carry with you every day other than your phone and wallet?
See, that's the real kicker, because when I asked you that question, you also had trouble with it for a little while.
Yeah.
And I probably should have thought about it more.
If you want, I can answer this for you, just knowing and seeing you the last year.
Oh, a hat.
There we go.
Yeah, a hat. Yeah, no, I love hats.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But like following, I'd say hat, water bottle, and like you said, backpack would probably be my big three.
Yeah, for sure. And then water bottle. Absolutely. Yeah. Got to stay hydrated.
Hydrate or dehydrate.
Yeah. If you weren't pursuing a career in film / documentary, what would you be doing instead?
I mean, like you, I really just can't picture myself doing a whole lot of other things. But I think if I had to, it would be the role of the people I want to film. Mm-hmm. Like I could see myself doing a lot of things. I could see myself being a farmer if I had to. I could be a farmer. I think it would be cool to be a marine biologist. I kind of I get seasick on like in the ocean, like when the boat's bobbing, like if the waves are too big. So I might have to get over that. It would be cool to be like a fly fishing guide.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
like do that, or like a
that's so down your
ranger. Yeah, just kind of all these outdoor things.
Yeah. Cool. Sick. What's a film you wish you could have worked on?
Jurassic Park.
That was very quick. Okay.
Easy. I love that film.
Yeah.
The sound, especially like the animatronics and things they were working with
during that time.
Yeah, during that time. Just it's again pushing things to the limits and innovating. Absolutely. Like if not Jurassic Park, I'd say either Jurassic Park or the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like as many problems as the original Star Wars film had, like how behind schedule and over budget, they were building camera systems to be able to do the stop motion animation stuff they wanted.
Right.
Like it's just absolutely crazy. Great innovators like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, great. Like they were great friends to each other, worked on each other's films, helped each other out. Just those minds would be awesome to see and like to work with.
Yeah, or even like Jaws, like the idea of having a movie about a shark and then you only
Yeah.
see the shark a certain amount because they had so many problems with the animatronics of like that shark.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you know, but there's um, a podcast called Blockbuster,
Uh-huh.
which I've listened to it all the way through twice. And if you want to listen to it, you can, or I would totally listen to it with you again.
Uh-huh.
It's about the making of the first Star Wars
Uh-huh.
like film, and it's about it like touches on how George Lucas and Steven Spielberg met. And then it also talks about the films that Steven Spielberg was doing at the time, like Jaws and um, what's this base one he did? Strange Encounter, Close Encounters,
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
something like that,
Yeah.
and like the stuff that was kind of going on at the same time. And so it's a great podcast. Listeners, if you like Star Wars and films, listen to that podcast.
Yeah. Shameless plug.
Yeah, not sponsored. Not sponsored.
What's your dream piece of equipment?
My dream piece of equipment. I guess I'll go similar route that you did. Like dream piece of equipment at the moment. Like still out of reach but might be feasible.
Right.
I would also probably say the C500
Right.
Mark II. Just being able to kind of build out that system and work with that
For
would
sure.
be really fun to do.
Absolutely. And when this Canon R5 drops,
Yeah.
that should be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Because it might be feasible and it might be like that level of quality.
Yeah, because I mean, well, the thing with equipment is this: it's like for the types of documentaries I want to do, I'm in the environment, and so the bigger your camera, the harder it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's like when we were shooting the hemp doc, and it was just the mic, like the camera with the mic and the monitor on it,
Right.
with USR for people to reference size. It was just this nice, tiny little compact setup that like still had like great image quality. And so the bigger you get and the more things you put on, it just makes it harder and harder.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. What is a secondary piece of equipment you would say is most important, other, obviously outside of cameras?
Yeah. Secondary piece of equipment. I would probably say cable ties.
Ooh, that's a good
Like I'll hold it up. These are Think Tank cable ties.
Mhm.
I use these for chargers, for literally everything. Any cable I wrap in this so it's not all over the place.
Yeah.
Things like that. What a lot of people would probably say is sandbags, but because we hate using lights, I would not say sandbags.
Yeah. And for people listening, like we're very big on natural light and just using what we have. Like the way I see it with like lighting, obviously it's important for these big budget films and like all these different things, but for documenting things, like lights, I don't know, they just take the whole natural like run it and gun it feel out of it. It seems artificial. I don't know. That's just a personal thing.
Yeah. They definitely have their place. And like in some documentaries, like you got to have the lighting on the person based off of where you're set up. But for us, our first preference will always be natural light.
Yeah, like how can we get the best lighting without it?
Yeah.
Like with natural light.
Yeah.
All right, and then we get into the big question that a lot of creatives or a lot of filmmakers have to deal with, and a lot of upcoming filmmakers have struggle with this, which is the fact that does gear really matter?
Yeah. I would say yes and no. I will say story comes first. If you have a good story, then people will watch the film. Like if it's something that they're interested in. Then after that, I'd say audio quality is important.
Mhm.
And so if your gear doesn't allow you to have good audio quality, then people won't like it. And then comes picture quality. So your gear should kind of match where you're at. Like you said in the last episode, when you're working on your first films, like my first films were shot on a GoPro, yours were shot on a little square camera.
Yeah.
And that was where we were at. And so the films we were making fit our age, the quality of the shots we were getting, and our stories. And then as you progress as a filmmaker and as a creator, the gear kind of comes to you. I know for like that I'm still obsessed with gear. Like there's so many things that I want. I don't think there's a filmmaker who isn't.
Right.
But you have to realize that story comes first, and that when you really need something, you'll be able to get it.
Yeah.
Like if you're shooting a film and you say, you know, I really, really wish I had this lens so I could get these shots, then by that point, you'll probably have the budget where you can rent it.
Yeah.
Or if it was something that would be feasible for the future, you could buy it.
Yeah.
But the type of gear you need and the gear that you'll be able to get will match where you're at as a filmmaker.
Right. And Lens Pro to Go is an incredible like platform for upcoming filmmakers who may not have a big budget to like rent a super high quality camera for 4 days. I just did that with the Black Lives Matter protests that I covered. But on your point with like image quality and stuff, I think we're approaching we're in a very interesting time in film where like old is becoming new. And I see this a lot in music videos, especially hip hop music videos, where people will use like film cameras and get this like retro effect. Everyone's trying to do this like VHS effect or like old school style, like grainy noise. And I think that, like I said, the old is becoming the new. So yeah, it's video quality is not as important as, like you said, audio. Audio is very important for
yeah. And you also get to a point where the decisions you're making are very intentional.
Yeah.
Right? Like with those music videos, people are intentionally using an older camera or intentionally putting on the effects. And that's important too. As a creator, you'll develop your own style and things you like, and then people will be able to recognize that. And then the last thing I'll say with the gear conversation is my advice to people as they start investing and things like that is date the camera, marry the lens mount. Your lenses will last you so long because it's physical like components in there, glass, things like that, they don't have software updates. They don't change really, whereas the camera bodies do. So if you pick the camera lens mount that you want and start investing in those lenses, which are more expensive but will last you a long time, then as the camera bodies improve, you can update those as you see fit. Like for Canon, the longest time it was their EF lens mount was really their main one. Now they're kind of shifting to the RF lens mount. So if you are kind of new to the game and are thinking you want a Canon, I would definitely go RF over EF if you have the choice.
Right.
But that also means that the EF camera stuff will start to discount in price, or you would expect to see a discount in price as the RF stuff fills in and that lineup kind of grows.
Right. Did you just come up with that? Did you just come up with the date the body and
date the camera, marry the lenses?
Yeah.
I heard that the other day, but it just popped back into my head. Yeah, it is. It's so smart.
Yeah, I like that.
Ooh, plus real quick before I move on, it just popped in my head. Plus, because the other thing is like cameras like Reds and things like that, you can put a Canon mount on that.
Yeah.
So it's like even that same thing. Say you upgrade from a Canon 60D, which you can get for what, $2,000 now, maybe less.
Yeah, it's probably
way less.
1.3, I think.
Yeah, 1,000. So and you can have lenses for your $1,000 camera, and then put those very same lenses on a $60,000 camera. Like it.
Oh wait, a Canon 60D?
Yeah.
Oh, bro, you could get it for like $300.
Okay, there you go. $300 camera. You can put the same
that's
lens.
What I used. That's what I started off. Like the first DSLR that I had was just my family's camera, and that was Canon.
Yeah.
Agreed. Is there truth to the phrase "fake it till you make it"?
100%.
Yeah.
Like you said, say yes and get better. I'll say this actually, if you're not willing to learn, then no.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are willing to learn, then there is 100% truth to the phrase "fake it till you make it," because the only way you're going to get better is by learning.
Yeah.
And I won't say go lie on your resume to get a job and then learn as you go, But if someone approaches you and asks you to do something and you like are somewhat competent or think you could do it, say yes, do the research that you need to, show up and be willing to learn, but also be willing to make mistakes and own up to your mistakes.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, 100%. How important are other people in the road to success?
Very important. I would say that other people are like they're important in the road to success because you'll find the right people who will stick with you and keep you going in the right direction and help you move to success faster. But then there's also people that you will have to leave behind and let go when you go on the road to success. And that doesn't necessarily mean like you just like never speak to them again, but it could mean like if you're working with someone on a project and that project gets, let's go all the way to the most extreme best case. So say you work on a film and you do the sound design for this film wins an Oscar for its sound design. The images in the film, not great, but the sound design was fantastic. So you get all this credit for the sound design. And then you kind of have to leave behind that filmmaker because as a filmmaker, they weren't kind of pulling their own weight in that regard, but they helped you get to a better point.
Right.
You kind of move on. Like that's not saying you never revisit them, but other people will help you move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What is your hope for the future in your career? Loaded question, but
the big one. You know, I would say that the hope for the future in my career is just to be happy and be making films that I enjoy. I'm sure that there will be times where like I'll have to do projects and things that I am not as passionate about, but the hope would be that I can get to a point where the films that I'm making are all ones that I would make if I wasn't getting paid.
Right.
Just films that I enjoy doing enough to be doing those on my own, and also to be making films that positively impact people. Like not so much that they're kind of screaming in their face for them to act, but ones that people see and they're like, you know what, like I can make a change in my life to keep this landscape how it is. Like I want to visit these places, but I also want to respect them. I don't want to go and destroy them and trample all over them. I want to go there, be respectful, and come back. And I also want to be able to meet people in my career. I think one of the great things about filmmaking is we get to tell other people's stories. You can tell your own, but by telling other people's stories, you find and meet some great people. And I just look forward to building relationships throughout the course of my career, really.
Damn. There you have it.
Yeah.
That about wraps it up. That was Luke Pohlman in our latest episode of Making. Yeah. Thanks, bro. That was awesome.
Thank you for having me on the podcast, sir.
Okay. All right. No, that was good, though.
Yeah, that's fun. It was stressful.
Thanks for taking the time to listen as we took a deep dive into Luke Pohlman's creative process, upbringing, and overall life inside and outside of filmmaking. Please let us know what you think of the podcast by writing a review, or let us know what you want to hear by leaving us a voice message on Anchor. We'd love to hear from you. That's it for this week's episode of Making. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks.